Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: Indonesia's Indosat pursues evolution from telecom to tech company. Hong Kong IPOs, here's what's in store in 2024 after a miserable 2023. Real estate stress is brewing in Asian markets other than China. 10 years on, what has Hong Kong's grand plan to cut waste actually achieved? Swimming jewel Nishikigoi carp exports to China halted. Indonesia's Indosat pursues evolution from telecom to tech company. Nikkei Asia. Indonesia's second-largest wireless provider, Indosat Ooredoo Hutchison, is focusing on digital services in a bid to become a broader tech company. To attract business partners, the company has opened the Marvelous Experience Center in Jakarta, which showcases systems developed with the likes of Google and Ericsson. Indosat has been working with Google on cloud computing since 2021 and teamed up with Cisco Systems in February on Internet of Things technology for smart cities. It also announced a partnership with China Mobile in September in areas including data centers. Hong Kong IPOs, here's what's in store in 2024 after a miserable 2023. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's IPO market had a dismal 2023, with the total value of IPOs falling 53.5% to a 20-year low of $5.9 billion from 68 listings, according to Refinitiv data. ZJLD Group CFO Lambert Wong Lianbua said that despite the slump in fundraising, the promise of Hong Kong remains undiminished. The city is ranked 8th globally in terms of IPOs, the lowest since 2001 when it was ranked 14th, according to Refinitiv data. Last year, Hong Kong had 144 IPOs raising $40 billion. The city fell behind Shenzhen's Chinext, Shanghai's Star Market, Nasdaq and NYSE in the US, Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange in India, but was ahead of Abu Dhabi Securities Exchange, Indonesia Stock Exchange and Singapore Exchange. Real estate stress is brewing in Asian markets other than China. Bloomberg. Rising interest rates and regulatory scrutiny are causing concerns for builders and creditors in Asian economies such as South Korea, Vietnam, and Hong Kong. In South Korea, the property market is showing strain after China, with home prices falling the most in 25 years. The high levels of consumer debt and balance sheet burden in the country are contributing to the softening housing market. In Vietnam, the property sector has been impacted by oversupply and corporate bond issuance issues. However, regulatory interventions and interest rate cuts have slowed the downward spiral. In Hong Kong, home prices have dropped to the lowest in almost 7 years, and revenues from office buildings and retail space have weakened. Developers have been forced to cut home prices significantly. In Australia, the Reserve Bank of Australia's tightening cycle has raised concerns over households' ability to handle higher interest rates. As many fixed-rate mortgages are set to roll over to higher, floating rates, there are concerns about financial stress among households. 10 years on, what has Hong Kong's grand plan to cut waste actually achieved? SCMP opinion. Hong Kong is falling behind on its recycling targets, with a recycling rate of just 32% last year, according to the annual waste report. The target was 55%, while the amount of municipal solid waste per person per day was 1.51 kilograms, compared to a target of 0.8 kilograms. The government's Blueprint for Sustainable Use of Resources 2013 to 2022, launched more than a decade ago, included plans for infrastructure and policies and legislation on schemes for waste charging and producer responsibility. However, none of these have been implemented. Swimming jewel Nishikigoi carp exports to China halted. Nikkei Asia. Exports of Nishikigoi, a breed of Japanese ornamental carp, to China have been halted, causing a setback to the thriving industry in Japan. The ban is due to the expiration of export licenses held by authorized carp farms without a clear explanation from Chinese authorities. Fish farms in Niigata Prefecture are now shifting their sales efforts to Europe, Southeast Asia, and other regions. However, breeders are hoping to resume shipments to the Chinese market, which previously accounted for about 20% of Nishikagoi exports. Billions well spent? Hong Kong's publicly funded hunt for sporting gold. South China Morning Post. The government of Hong Kong has spent at least 7.4 billion Hong Kong dollars, $945 million, on supporting athletes over the past decade, according to the South China Morning Post. The funds have been administered by the Hong Kong Sports Institute, an organization that has been criticized for its lack of transparency. The number of athletes receiving government support is unknown, but some athletes are paid up to 50,000 Hong Kong dollars per month in grants. The funding system for sports has been reviewed after each Olympics, but the criteria for funding have remained largely unchanged since 2005, said the South China Morning Post. The Hong Kong government's Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau declined to disclose whether the funding criteria were still fit for purpose. The City Sports Commission has extended the status of all Tier A, and Tier B sports until March 2025. Some athletes were unable to compete internationally due to COVID-19 restrictions, which also prevented international travel. Hong Kong stablecoin rules would be extremely challenging to tether USDC. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's proposed rules for stablecoins are both encouraging and concerning, according to industry insiders. The proposed regime includes a minimum paid-up capital requirement of at least 25 million Hong Kong dollars, $3.2 million, and would not allow unlicensed companies to sell stablecoins to the public. Experts have said that the framework will be difficult for stablecoin issuers to meet and could deter global issuers from offering their coins to Hong Kong's public. The proposed rules would require stablecoin issuers to apply for a license within 3 months of the regulation being implemented. Japanese restaurant group Watami to buy Singapore's leader food. Nikkei Asia. Japanese restaurant operator Watami is set to make its first-ever overseas acquisition by purchasing Singapore's leader food and 2 related companies for SGD 9.2 m, $6.9 million. Leader Food imports beef and seafood into Singapore and also processes and delivers food to Chinese restaurants in the city-state. Watami plans to use its expertise to expand Leader Food sales channels to restaurants serving Japanese and Western cuisine. This acquisition will strengthen Watami's procurement capabilities throughout Asia. Hong Kong number to remember during stressful times. SCMP opinion. Hong Kong has introduced a 24-hour hotline offering counseling support for individuals struggling with mental health issues during the holiday season. The hotline, which is backed by the government and can be reached by dialing 18111, has been operational since Wednesday and has received a high volume of calls. The service coordinates services from over 20 government and non-government organizations and may offer immediate referrals for specific services and follow-ups. The hotline is expected to handle 300 to 400 calls a day and is part of a broader effort to address mental health issues in Hong Kong, which have been exacerbated by months of anti-government protests and the COVID-19 pandemic. Not high-tech burgers, how U.S. fast food giants are supersizing investment in China. The Sydney Morning Herald. Foreign investment in China's fast food industry is growing, despite tensions between China and its Western trading partners. Major American fast food chains, including KFC, McDonald's, and Starbucks, are expanding their presence in China, attracted by the country's large consumer market. KFC's parent company recently opened its 10,000th restaurant in China and plans to have stores within reach of half the population by 2026. Similarly, McDonald's plans to open 3,500 new stores in China within the next 4 years, while Starbucks has invested $220 million in a manufacturing and distribution facility in eastern China. The investments in consumer goods come as many U.S. companies are shifting investments to other locations or repatriating their earnings due to concerns about security controls and protectionism. However, overall foreign investment in China has fallen this year, with net foreign direct investment in China sinking to a deficit of $11.8 billion in Q3 2023. The uncertainty surrounding China's business environment has caused 43% of members of the U.S.-China Business Council to report that China's business environment has deteriorated in the past year, and 21% are investing fewer resources in China. Reduced threshold for sellers at old Hong Kong buildings must get balance right. SCMP opinion. The Development Bureau in Hong Kong has proposed lowering the threshold for redeveloping old buildings in order to speed up the urban renewal process. Currently, at least 80% of owners must agree to sell a building that is 50 years old, but the new proposal would reduce this to 70% for buildings between 50 and 59 years old in designated areas. The aim is to make it easier for private developers to lead redevelopment projects. However, there are concerns that this could result in individual homeowners having less bargaining power over compensation. The proposal will also establish a one-stop shop to provide support services to minority owners, such as legal referral services, counseling, relocation, and mediation support. McDonald's prices to rise in Hong Kong by about 2.6% in New Year. South China Morning Post. McDonald's in Hong Kong will increase most of its prices by $1 due to rising operating expenses, blaming the high cost of local labor, global consumer goods and food. The price increase will take effect on January 2 and will apply to all products sold at McDonald's, except for some buckets of chicken. The changes are expected to result in an average rise of about 2.6%. The fast food chain last raised prices in Hong Kong in January 2022, citing high electricity costs, transport expenses, manpower shortages, and increasing costs of cooking oil and ingredients. From Gaza to Ukraine, U.S. risks imperial overstretch as China waits in wings. SCMP opinion. The recent conflict between Israel and Hamas in Gaza risks spilling over into a wider conflict that could divert U.S. attention away from its rivalry with China, according to an op-ed in the South China Morning Post. The author argues that the U.S. historically has benefited from maneuvering its rivals into wars while it remains aloof, citing the World Wars and the Korean and Vietnam Wars. However, the U.S. is currently finding itself embroiled in conflicts, while China is able to profit from them. This comes as the U.S. seeks to focus on its competition with China and its global leadership strategy. End the show trial of free speech hero Jimmy Lai. The Independent. The prosecution of Jimmy Lai, a 76-year-old publisher in Hong Kong, represents a new low in the city's descent into darkness under Chinese control, according to Michael Sheridan in The Independent. Lai has committed no crime recognized by any civilized government but is likely to be given a life sentence. His real offense, in the eyes of the Chinese regime, is to have published free speech through his top-selling tabloid newspaper, Apple Daily, and its digital editions. Lai, a British citizen, could have escaped but instead chose to stay in Hong Kong during the 2019 protests. Sheridan argues that the British government has no power in this matter but that the international legal profession can exercise the power of shame and ostracism, while the business community should realize what this trial means for them. Sheridan also calls for the British judges who still sit as non-permanent judges on the Hong Kong Court of Final Appeal to resign, stating that it is hard to see how their honorable view of supporting the rule of law can survive a sequence of trials that belong to the debased tradition of communist judiciaries. Hong Kong deficit hits 164.1 billion Hong Kong dollars for first 8 months of financial year. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's deficit for the first 8 months of the financial year has reached 164.1 billion Hong Kong dollars, $21 billion, far worse than the government's full-year estimate of 100 billion Hong Kong dollars. The deficit is due to major types of revenue, such as salaries and profit taxes, being received towards the end of the financial year. Despite the deficit, economists believe that the government could still secure income from land sales, profit taxes, salaries taxes, and stamp duty to reduce the deficit to around 100 billion Hong Kong dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, bringing you the latest news from around the globe. Let's dive into today's headlines. First up, we have Indonesia's Indosat, which is transforming itself from a telecom company into a tech powerhouse. They are partnering with major players like Google and Ericsson to develop digital services and attract business partners. It's a smart move in today's tech-driven world, and I'm excited to see how it pans out for them. In Hong Kong, the IPO market had a tough year in 2023, but there's still hope for the future. Despite a significant drop in fundraising, the promise of Hong Kong as a global financial hub remains strong. It's ranked 8th globally in terms of IPOs, and with the right strategies and policies in place, we could see a rebound in the coming years. Moving on to the real estate market, there are concerns brewing in Asian economies such as South Korea, Vietnam, and Hong Kong. Rising interest rates and regulatory scrutiny are causing strain in these markets, with falling home prices and weakening revenues from commercial properties. It's a challenging situation, but with the right interventions, we can hope for a stabilization in the future. Next, we have Hong Kong's struggle to meet its recycling targets. The city fell short of its goal, with a recycling rate of just 32% last year. It's disappointing to see the government's plans for sustainable use of resources not being implemented effectively. Let's hope they can take the necessary steps to improve their recycling efforts and meet their targets in the future. In other news, the export of Nishikagoi carp from Japan to China has been halted, causing a setback for the industry. Chinese authorities have not provided a clear explanation for the ban, leaving Japanese fish farms to shift their sales efforts to other regions. Hopefully, they can resolve the issues and resume shipments to the Chinese market, which was a significant market for them. Now, let's talk about the big bucks spent on sports in Hong Kong. The government has invested billions in supporting athletes over the past decade. While some criticize the lack of transparency in the funding process, it's clear that Hong Kong is committed to nurturing sports talent. Let's hope that this investment pays off and we see more success from Hong Kong athletes in the international arena. Moving on to stablecoins, Hong Kong's proposed rules are both encouraging and concerning. While they aim to regulate stablecoin issuers, the requirements might be challenging for these issuers to meet. It's a delicate balance between ensuring stability and not stifling innovation. We'll have to wait and see how these rules play out. Japanese restaurant operator Watami is making its first-ever overseas acquisition by buying Singapore's Leader Food. This move will strengthen Watami's capabilities in procurement throughout Asia. It's an exciting development for the company as they expand their reach beyond Japan. In Hong Kong, mental health support is being offered through a 24-hour hotline during the holiday season. With the impact of anti-government protests and the pandemic, mental health issues have become a pressing concern. It's great to see the government taking steps to address this and provide support to those in need. And finally, foreign fast food chains are supersizing their investment in China's consumer market. Despite tensions between China and its Western trading partners, major American chains like KFC, McDonald's, and Starbucks are expanding their presence in the country. It's a testament to the potential of the Chinese market and the confidence these companies have in its growth. That's all for today's news roundup. I hope you enjoyed the stories and my take on them. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on these topics? Do you have any questions or opinions to share? Don't be shy, let's start a discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.